Alright, let's hope that's the only network issue we have today. And welcome. I know it's been a very long time since I streamed, but I had a request to do some more stories, so that's what we're gonna do. I'm not sure if we're gonna keep this music though because it's kinda get on my nerves how much it's repeating. Yeah, we're just gonna not worry about it. Hi Lumia, how you doing? Hello, Sergeant 44. Sorry about that. I've been incredibly busy. And honestly, I'm probably gonna keep being busy. 'Tis the season. But today we're gonna be reading Cinder or the Little Glass Slipper, written by Carrie Fransman and Jonathan Plackett. If you're not familiar with these two authors, they make a lot of gender flipped fairy tales. I had a brain fart there for a moment. Totally not rusty. Right. Once there was a lady who married, for her second husband, the proudest and most haughty man that was ever seen. He had by a former wife 2 sons of his own humour, who were indeed exactly like him in all things. She had likewise by another husband a young son, but of unparalleled goodness and sweetness of temper, which he took from his father, who was the best creature in the world. No sooner were the ceremonies of the wedding over, but the stepfather began to show himself in his true colors. He could not bear the good qualities of this pretty boy, and the less because they made his own sons appear the more odious. He employed him in the meanest work of the house. He scoured the dishes, tables, etc., scrubbed the store's chamber and those of the masters, his sons. He lay up in the story garret upon a wretched straw bed, while his brother lay in fine rooms, with floors all in lead, upon beds of the very newest fashion, and where they had looking glasses so large that they might see themselves at full length from head to foot. Ah, my book is not cooperating. The poor boy bore all patiently, and dared not tell his mother, who would have rattled him off, for his husband governed her entirely. When he had done his work, he used to go into the chimney corner and sit down among the cinders and ashes, which made him commonly be called Cinder Boy. But the youngest, who was not so rude and uncivil as the eldest, called him Cinder. However, Cinder, notwithstanding his mean apparel, was 100 times handsomer than the boys, though they were always dressed very richly. It happened that the Queen's daughter gave a ball, and invited all persons of fashion to it. Our young masters were also invited, for they cut a very grand figure among the quality. They were mightily delighted at this invitation, and wonderfully busy in choosing out such gowns, pantaloons, and handcloths as might become them. This was a new trouble to Cinder, for it was he who ironed his brother's linen and plaited the ruffles. They talked all day of nothing but how they should be dressed. "For my part," said the eldest, "I will wear a red velvet suit with French trimming." "And I," said the youngest, "shall have my usual pantaloons, but then, to make amends for that, I will put on my gold flowered cloak, and my diamond chest piece, which is far from being the most ordinary in the world." They sent for the best hired man they could get to make up their headdresses and adjust their neckerchiefs, and they had their red brushes and patches from Monsieur de la Pouche. Cinder was likewise called up to them to be consulted in all these matters, for he had excellent notions, and advised them always for the best, nay, and offered his services to dress their heads, which they were very willing he should do. As he was doing this, they said to him, "Cinder, would you not be glad to go to the ball?" "Alas," said he, "you will endure me. It is not for such as I am to go thither." "Thou art in the right of it," they replied. "It would make the people laugh to see Cinder boy at a ball." Any one but Cinder would have dressed their heads awry, but he was very good, and dressed them perfectly well. They were almost 2 days without eating, so much were they transported with joy. They broke above a dozen laces in trying to be laced up close, that they might have a fine spindle shape, and they were continually looking at the looking glasses. At last the happy day came. They went to court, and Cinder followed them with his eyes as long as he could, and then, when he had lost sight of them, he fell a crying. His godfather, who saw him in all tears, asked him what was the matter. I wish I could." He was not able to speak the rest, being interrupted by his tears and sobbing. The godfather of his, who was a fairy, said to him, "Thou wishest thou couldst go to the ball, is it not so?" "Yes," said Cinder with a great sigh. "Well," said his godfather, "be but a good boy, and I will contrive that thou shalt go." Then he took him into his chamber, and said to him, "Run into the garden and bring me a pumpkin." Cinder went immediately to gather the finest he could get, and brought it to his godfather, not being able to imagine how this pumpkin could make him go to the ball. His godfather scooped out all the inside of it, leaving nothing but the rind. Which done, he struck it with his wand, and then the pumpkin was instantly turned into a fine coach, gilded all over with gold. He then went to look into his mouse trap. There he found 6 mice, all alive, and ordered Cinder to lift up a little trap door, when, giving each mouse as it went out a little tap with his wand, the mouse was that moment turned into a fine horse, which altogether made a very fine set of 6 horses of beautiful mouse-colored dapple gray. Being at loss for a coachwoman, "I will go and see," said Cinder. "If there is never a rat in the rat trap, we may make a coachwoman of her." "Thou art in the right," replied his godfather. "Go and look." Cinder brought the trap to him, and there were 3 huge rats. The fairy made his choice of one of the 3, which had the longest fur, and having touched her with his wand, she was turned into a fat, jolly coachwoman, who had the smartest whisker eyes ever beheld. After that he said to him, "Go again into the garden, and you will find 6 lizards behind the watering pot. Bring them to me." He had no sooner done so, but his grandfather turned them into 6-foot women, who skipped up immediately behind the coach, with their liveries all bedaubed with gold and silver, and clung as close behind each other as they had done nothing else their whole lives. The fairy then said to Cinder, "Well, you see here our epicate fit to the ball with. Are you not pleased with it?" "Oh, yes," cried he, "but Must I go thither as I am in these old nasty rags? His godfather only just touched him with his wand, and at the same instant his clothes were torn into cloth of gold and silver, all beset with jewels. This done, he gave him a pair of glass slippers, the prettiest in the whole world. Being thus decked out, he got up into his coach, but his godfather, above all things, commanded him not to stay until after midnight, telling him at the same time that if he stayed 1 minute longer, the coach would be a pumpkin again, his horses mice, his coachwoman a rat, and his footmen lizards. And his clothes became just as they were before. He promised his godfather he would not fail of leaving the ball before midnight, and then away he drives, scarce able to contain himself for joy. The queen's daughter, who was told that a great prince whom nobody knew was coming, ran out to receive him. She gave him her hand as he alighted out of the coach, and led him into the ball among all the company. There was immediately a profound silence. They left off dancing, and the violins ceased to play. So attentive was everybody to contemplate the singular beauty of this unknown newcomer. Nothing was then heard but a confused noise of "Huh, how handsome is he! Huh, how handsome is he!" The queen herself, old as she was, could not help watching him, and telling the king softly that it was a long time since she had seen such a beautiful and lovely creature. All the gentlemen were busied in considering his clothes and headdress, and they might have some made made the next day after the same pattern, provided that they can meet with such fine materials and as able hands to make them. The rhythm of this book is really weird. The queen's daughter conducted him to the most honorable seat, and afterwards took him to dance with her. He danced so very gracefully that they all more and more admired him. A fine collection was served up, whereof the young princess ate not a morsel, so intently was she busied in gazing on him. He went and sat down by his brothers, showing them 1,000 civilities, giving them the part of the oranges and citrons which the princess had presented him with, which very much surprised them, for they did not know him. While Cinder was thus amusing his brothers, he heard the clock strike 11 3/4, whereupon he immediately made a courtesy to the company and hasted away as fast as he could. Being got home, he ran to seek out his grandfather, and after having thanked him, he said he could not but heartily wish he might go the next day to the ball, because the queen's daughter had desired him. As he was eagerly telling his grandfather whatever had passed at the ball, his two brothers knocked at the door, which Cinder ran and opened. "Oh, how long you have stayed!" cried he, gaping, rubbing his eyes, and stretching himself as if he had been just waked out of his sleep. He had not, however, any manner of inclination to sleep since they went from home. "If thou hadst been at the ball," said one of his brothers, "thou wouldst not have been tired with it. They came thither in finest prince, the most beautiful ever was seen with mortal eyes. He showed us 1,000 civilities, and gave us oranges and citrons." Cinder seemed very indifferent in the matter. Indeed, he asked them the name of the prince, but they told him they did not know it, and that the queen's daughter was very uneasy on this account. "And would give all the world to know who he was." At this, Cinder smilingly replied, he must then be a very beautiful indeed. How happy you have been! Could not I see him? Ah, dear Mr. Charles, do lend me your yellow suit of clothes which you wore every day." "Ay, to be sure," cried Mr. Charles. "Lend my clothes to such a dirty cinder as thou art? I should be a fool." Cinder indeed expected was such an answer, and was very glad of the refusal, for he would have been sadly put to it if his brother had lent him what he was asking for jestingly. The next day the two brothers were at the ball, and so was Cinder, but dressed more magnificently than before. The queen's daughter was always by him, and never ceased her compliments and kind speeches to him, to whom all this was so far from being tiresome that he quite forgot that his godfather had recommended to him, so that he, at last, counted the clock striking 12 when he took it to be no more than 11. He then rose up and fled as nimble as a deer. The princess followed, but could not overtake him. He left behind one of his glass slippers, which the princess took up most carefully. He got home, but quite out of breath, and in his nasty old clothes, having nothing left him of all his finery but one of the little slippers. Fellow to that he dropped. The guards at the palace gate were asked if they had not seen a prince going out. Who said they had seen nobody go out but a young boy, very meanly dressed, and who had more than the air of a poor country lad than a gentleman. Then the two brothers returned from the ball. Cinder asked them if they had been well diverted and if the fine gentleman had been there. They told him yes, but that he hurried away immediately when it struck 12, and with so much haste that he dropped one of his little glass slippers, the prettiest in the world, which the queen's daughter had taken up, that she had done nothing but look at him all the time at the ball, and that most certainly she was very much in love with the beautiful person who owned the glass slipper. What they said was very true, for a few days after the queen's daughter caused it to be proclaimed, by sound of trumpet, that she would marry whose foot the slipper would just fit. They whom she employed began to try it upon the princes, then the dukes, and all the court, but in vain. It was brought to the two brothers, who did all they possibly could to thrust their foot into the slipper, but they could not effect it. Cinder, who saw all this, and knew his slipper, said to them, laughing, "Let me see if it will not fit on me." His brothers burst out laughing, and began to banter him. The lady who was sent to try the slipper looked earnestly at Cinder, and finding him very handsome, said, it was but just that he should try, and that she had orders to let everyone make the trial. She obliged Cinder to sit down, and putting the slipper to his foot, she found it went on very easily, and fitted him as if it had been made of wax. The astonishment his two brothers were in was excessively great, but still abundantly greater when Cinder pulled out of his pocket the other slipper and put it on his foot. Thereupon it came his godfather, who, having touched with his wand Cinder's clothes, made them richer and more magnificent than any of those he had before. And now his two brothers found him to be that fine, beautiful gentleman whom they all seen at the ball. They threw themselves at their feet to beg a pardon for all the ill treatment they had made him undergo. Cinder took them up, and as he embraced them, cried that he forgave them with all his heart, and desired them to always love him. He was conducted to the young princess. Dressed as he was, she thought him more charming than ever, and a few days after married him. Cinder, who was no less good than beautiful, gave his two brothers lodgings in the palace, and that very same day matched them with the two great ladies of the court.